week's episode of the Goodrum Show with me, Chris Goodrum. As per usual, a big thank you to everybody that watched last week's episode of the show, liked, commented, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, very much appreciated. It's a little cooler today, thankfully. I think if it would have been in the 30s, I might have been reconsidering doing an episode of the show today, because it's, even so, it's still fairly warm inside. Yeah, so it takes more than a little bit of heat to not do an episode of the show. So I thought last week's episode of the show was good. Always nice to sort of catch up on sort of independents and distilleries and things like that I've kind of lost touch with over the years. But so yeah, I thought it was interesting. So today's episode of the show is a bit of a general roundup. As you know, I like to sort of do little roundup episodes of the show every now and again, because I get samples and I pick up bits and pieces and I sort of put them to one side and think, well, yeah, I'll do an episode of the show based around that, and sometimes they never happen, because they're odd samples. So every now and again I like to do a sort of a general roundup. So all of these samples, with the exception of the Ben Nevis, were from the relevant distilleries, and they're all relatively recent. Well, they've come to me relatively recent. Some are brand new bottlings, some maybe not so new, but like I said, these are all sort of samples that have kind of come my way fairly recently, so I thought they were diverse enough to sort of be of interest for an episode of the show. So not really a great deal to say, apart from let's just take a look at today's lineup. Right, okay, so kind of following on, I suppose, from the rum episode of the show I did not so long ago with two of the rum bottlings from Pocketful of Stones in Cornwall, I noticed that they had done a rum finished version of their Hellstone whiskey. I mean, why not? You've already got the cask. So this is the Hellstone King of Prussia rum cask. It's basically their Hellstone whiskey, which I'm assuming is still the same as it always has been, i.e. vatted with some Loch Lomond. I don't know whether I must ask the question if all the whiskey is now sort of Cornish rather than sort of the vatting that it used to be. Anyway, so this is bottled at 40% and it's finished for 6 months in the King of Prussia rum casks. Now, you're probably thinking, why am I putting a bottle of 10-year-old Ben Nevis in the lineup? Well, for some reason, Ben Nevis 10-year-old just disappeared a couple of years ago, I think. I never managed to get hold of it, and maybe it's me, maybe I just kind of just gave up on trying to order the thing, but then a few weeks ago, a couple of months ago I think it was, no, more than a couple of months ago, beginning of the year in actual fact, I discovered that lo and behold the 10-year-old had made a reappearance. New label, so this was apparently the label from 2021. I mean, I don't know, did I miss it? I have no idea, I know Ben Nevis is a bit of an idiosyncratic distillery, but I obviously stopped looking for it about then. Anyway, so this is the Ben Nevis 10-year-old, bottled at 46%, with the new 2021 label. I mean, maybe they did the new label in 2021, and then who knows? Who knows? It's Ben Nevis. It's kind of like they're an enigma to a certain extent. Okay, so on to number 3. So this is a brand spanking new bottling from Glencadam. So a big thank you to Ben, who kindly dropped in with a load of samples not so long ago. This is the 17-year-old Reserve de Calvados, bottled at 46%. 14 years in ex-bourbon with 3 years finishing in ex-Calvados barrels. Very in at the moment, Calvados finish. I mean, and it's like I was saying when I showed this to the Whisky group a couple of weeks ago, or last week in actual fact I think it was. You can't just basically go, yeah, let's do a Calvados finish, and then suddenly sort of put one out onto the market, because as you know, with all things whisky related, it takes time. You have to have foresight, you have to have a look in advance, and I assume that every now and again somebody imports a load of these kind of casks, because you see them all kind of coming out roughly around about the same time, so one assumes that, you know, there's a load of these casks get imported into the UK, and a number of distilleries and indies and things like that will purchase them because they become available. And then obviously, you know, 6 months down the line, everybody starts releasing a Calvados finish. But it's very in at the moment, so it's nice to see something a little bit different. And I love my Calvados, so mixing the two together sounds like a really good idea. Talking of interesting casks, that brings us nicely on to the next bottling, which is a brand new release from Isle of Raasay. So this is, as you probably see, quite darkly coloured, so obviously sherry cask matured. But this is not any old sherry cask, it has to be said. So this is their peated and unpeated spirit, which has been fully matured for, I don't know how many years, but we'll probably get an inkling when we taste it, in Oloroso casks, but they are ex-Hungarian oak Oloroso casks, or Oloroso barriques in actual fact. So don't know whether, I'm assuming that they had the barriques seasoned for them, but yeah, really intriguing. So in actual fact, I have a note, it's about a 5-year-old. The spirit was distilled sometime between January and June in 2021 and bottled in March of this year, so 5 years in these Hungarian sherry casks, and sounds really intriguing. And talking of intriguing casks, that brings us on to the third release from one of my favourite distilleries, the West Midlands Distillery, so a big thank you to the guys there for the sample for today's episode of the show. It is called Albion, bottled at 53.1%, and it is, as the name would suggest, English. Right down to its trouser turn-ups. It's unpeated English barley, Laureate and Plumage Archer. They've used English ale yeast and aged it in virgin English oak casks, not sherry. I mean, look at the colour of that. Now, interestingly enough, the White Peaks Distillery did a bottling, I think it was last year, which had been, I think, finished in English oak, or could have been matured entirely, I forget now, and that was pretty highly coloured as well, it has to be said. So it looks like English oak takes no prisoners, so to speak. So yes, it will be interesting to see what that has done to the spirit. And the final whisky is quite an intriguing one. The rep dropped in January for with this particular distillery, InchDairnie, this bottling is called the KinGlassie Raw Edition 2017. It's 8 years old, bottled at 46.3%, they seem to love doing what Glenallachie do, and sort of shove in random capital letters. So you've got capital I and a capital D for in InchDairnie, and then it's capital K, capital G for KinGlassie. I mean, okay, fine. We'll allow them the little bit of idiosyncrasy, and it's interesting because, as far as I was aware, they had only actually released some rye, and then the only single malt bottlings I'd seen were 2 releases that James Eady had done. So not a distillery I have any direct contact with, so obviously not one that I really thought about. And then the rep pops in with a sample of it, and I think, oh, you are actually bottling a single malt now, are you? Anyway, so it's interesting. So heavily peated lowland, I believe, is the USP for this particular whisky, but we'll find out when we get there. So I think it's going to be an interesting tasting, and sort of a lot of interesting whiskies, so I'm looking forward to sharing with you guys. So we'll kick off with a bit of Cornish then, shall we? Right, okay, so let's start with the Hellstones King of Prussia rum cask. Let's see what the nose gives us on this then, shall we? A little reserved, possibly. It's got some astringent green fruits, some slightly high tone notes. There is that sort of Lomandy element sort of lurking there. Barley, And then in comes some toasty American oak, some sweet rummy fruits. Yeah, I like that. I like the balance. I think it's quite well balanced. You've got, like I said, a little bit of an astringent note coming through. You've got the sweetness of the rum cask. You've got a little bit of oak cask coming through. Yeah, I mean, okay, I'd like to see it bottled at a higher ABV than 40%. It has to be said. I mean, I would have loved to see 46, but then, you know, it's all price points with a lot of distilleries, and I think it's got a reasonably good intensity for a 40% ABV chill filtered whiskey. Let's see what the pass like. Initially there's less rum cask on the palate. Kind of kicks off with the barley, fresh barley, apricot, a little high tone note. Rum cask moves in on the mid palate. It's got a nice dried fleshy fruit character, a sort of sultanery type of dried fruit as opposed to raisinated dried fruit. Nice length, little bit of astringency on the finish, touch of citrus as well. Again, like I said, I think for 40%, it's got a pleasant amount of intensity. I'd love to have seen that at 46% because that really would have sort of picked up the intensity level, but obviously that's not my call. Can't remember what it actually retails for, but it's not overly expensive, and I think it's quite a pleasant starter, shall we say. Right, okay, so let's move on to the Ben Nevis. Now, the first thing I noticed about this particular new bottling of Ben Nevis is, don't look like there's any sherry there, and I always remember a bit of sherry lurking with the Ben Nevis, so let's see what the nose is like. And indeed, no sherry on the nose at all. It's got a nice freshness, quite young feeling. There's the classic sort of malty, bready, doughy kind of character. Not a great deal of oak either. It's sort of like, it's kind of front and centre spirit, which I'm not complaining about. I mean, I do like the spirit character of Ben Nevis. Mind you, it's always been one of those distilleries that I think has worked quite nicely with sherry, as long as it's not too heavy on the sherry. That sort of weighty, bready kind of character does tend to come through. A little bit of green apple, a little bit of minerals, some unsweetened barley. It's kind of, it's clean, it's fresh. Yeah, it's a nice nose. It's got the weight of Ben Nevis, like I said, the doughiness. But it's got a freshness as well, and it really doesn't seem like it's 10 years old. That sort of slightly astringent green fruit kind of note is kind of giving it that kind of more youthful kind of feel. Anyway, that's sort of pass on. Seems more its age on the palate now. It's got a nice juicy fruitiness, and this is the thing with non-chill filtration and 46%. It's not just about the intensity and the slight mouth-watering note on the finish. It's about the body as well, and a lot of the time when you take out the alcohol or cut it down with water and things like that, you do lose a lot of the weight and the feel of the whiskey. So anyway, more oak on the palate, sort of kicks off with that sort of slightly creaminess, that creamy American oak, a little bit vanilla, malt, toffee, and then a bit of breadiness, nice weight, like I said, good fleshy fruit. I like it. I mean, I don't miss the sherry component of the older 10-year-old Ben Nevis. It's just sort of like a little bit of a surprise, it has to be said, as Ben Nevis always seemed to have at least a little bit of sherry in it. But that's certainly, you know, not done any harm to it whatsoever. I think it's an absolutely lovely whiskey, and like I said, I've been a big fan of Ben Nevis and their quirky ways for a number of years, and that's a nice whiskey, actually. Right, okay, so let's move on to the Glencadam 17-year-old. Let's see what the nose gives us on this end, shall we? Now that smells a lot older than 17. It's got that lovely sawdusty old American oak, macerated apricot, apple, pineapple, old pineapple, vanilla. The Calvados notes are really subtle, but it's a bit of green apple, a little bit of spice, sort of green appley spicy sort of nip there, a little bit of sweet barley as well, touch of tannin, some earth. I mean, that is a fabulous nose, absolutely stunning, lovely balance. I mean, Glencadam is certainly one of my favourite distilleries. I love how it's wonderfully estery and fruity when it's young, and then it sort of gains this sort of sawdusty old American oak kind of character, and yet retains the estery fruit. It's just the type of whiskey I love to drink at the end of the day. It's not challenging, it's complex, and it's fruity. I mean, it's kind of like, well, you know, that kind of ticks all the right boxes as far as I'm concerned. And by and large, their finishes are really quite judicious. They don't tend to overdo them. There's one or two that maybe I've tasted over the years that has been a little over into the dark side, but by and large, most of the finishing, I think it's, I'm assuming Robert Fleming is still the head distiller there and blender. It's just bloody good at the end of the day. Anyway, let's see what the parts like. There's a little bit more of the Calvados on the palate, a little bit more of that macerated apple, green apple, baked apple, but again the mature sawdusty American oak, the fleshy estery fruit, the apricot, the apple, the white fruit, nice grippy tannins, lovely intensity, again lovely spiciness, and this is often the case with 46% ABV, and there is a reason why people bottle at 46% ABV, because it is just such a lovely ABV to bottle at. You know, it's not, you don't need to add water with it. There's just enough intensity, just enough alcohol, just to sort of, you know, give you that intensity of character. Yes, there are some people that probably find that a little bit much, but then that's the wonderful thing. Put a little drop of water with it and you can drop it down to 40%. Personally, that is absolutely ideal as far as I'm concerned. Absolutely lovely. Yeah. Great. Right, okay, so let's move on to the Isle of Raasay Hungarian Oak Limited Edition. Let's see what the nose gives on this end, shall we? Well, considering it spent 5 whole years in sherry, lots of spirit characters to start off with. Quite youthful rose petal spirit, savoury, meaty, spicy, rich fruit, manure, ginger cake, sweet tannins. There's a darkness there as well, which is quite intriguing. Dark chocolate, raisins, and that's really quite complex. I like the youthfulness. I think if this was a little bit older, you would have lost some of that youthful intensity, which kind of, I think, really balances it up really nicely. And I love the way that the distillery is playing around with all these different oak types. I mean, that's kind of dark marzipan. I mean, obviously Hungarian oak gives you that sort of darker oak character, unlike sort of, say, American oak, which is obviously lighter, more vanilla, custard, etc., etc. This is a more darkness to it, and I've always loved sort of, you know, distilleries using different types of oak to sort of see, and not necessarily oak, chestnut, things like that, just to see what these different types of wood do to the spirit. Oh, I love this. I think this is really intense. I mean, it's 50%, and that's my kind of, you know, I wouldn't say limit of ABV without water. I really don't think it needs it, but I mean the intensity is just, oh yeah. Let's see what the parts like. spicy, nutty, toasty, slightly tannic oak up first. Again, it's got a dark oak kind of character. Subtle raisinated fruits, subtle sherry notes onto the mid palate, subtler on the peat as well. Still has that sort of slight rose petally, youthful kind of character. The finish is quite dry and quite grippy in actual fact. So it's a kind of combination of alcohol and tannins, which is kind of just kind of curtailing that finish. But that has a big, robust, oaky kind of character. But there's balance there as well. And that is the one thing that I really like about this whisky, is that it's not a shy and retiring whisky by any shadow of a doubt. Loads and loads of flavour, but there's complexity. It's certainly not one-dimensional. Okay, so I get less sherry, I get less oak now. Now I've diluted it. I'm getting more of the sort of the barley, the citrus. There's less peat as well. Still quite spicy, and there's still a sort of dark element there, it has to be said. But it's a little lighter overall. Personally, I think I prefer the nose as nature intended at 50%, with that darker intensity of character and that spiciness. But I guess for some people this may well be a little bit more user friendly. Anyway, let's see what that's like. Bit fuller, less intense, but still round, juicy, more emphasis on the barley and the fruit. Darker oak notes are still there, but they're sort of kind of pushed to the edge to a certain extent. Still quite gingery, still quite spicy, nice finish. Again, I think with or without water, that's absolutely fine. I mean, it does lengthen it once you put a little drop of water with it. Maybe you lose a little element of the complexity when you dilute it to a certain extent. It doesn't quite feel so young, so you kind of lose some of that youthful spirit character, and the oak is a little bit more rounded and a little less tight and gritty and tannic. So it's horses for courses with this whisky. I think it's a stunningly good whisky at the end of the day. I love what Raasay are doing. I think they're bottling some really interesting stuff, and their core bottling is a lovely go-to whisky, I think, with all the different elements. You may well remember I did an episode of the show with all the different elements. There's also incidentally a sort of a lovely tasting pack with I think I might have done an episode of the show using those, with all the different sort of like oak species that they use. I mean, it's just really intriguing. I mean, it's kind of like, you know, if you're a sort of like a master blender or something like that, you'd love what Raasay are doing. You've got this huge palette of different sort of flavours and things to play with. You know, you'd be like a kid in a sweetie shop, I think. So, yeah, if you haven't tasted a Raasay yet, just go out and get one, because it's a bloody good whiskey. That's the thing. Right, okay, so time to move on to the dark side. Let's see what the nose gives us on this then, shall we? Ooh, right, yeah, no sort of shortage of wood notes here, I think. Really dark, really toasty, tight, tannic, dusty wood tannins. It's got a really intriguing kind of aroma, and it does remind me very much of the White Peaks whisky. That it does seem that the English oak has a very distinctive character. It is a take no prisoners kind of like in your face kind of oak. It need I say any more at the end of the day? It is a bit masking the character of the spirit, it has to be said. There is a touch of herbal barley, a little youthful rose petal, peanut, macadamia, almond, spices, ginger, toffee. It's a mind-blowing whisky, it has to be said. It is unique and unusual. Ordinarily, I would probably say it's a little bit unbalanced because it's so over into the dark side of the oak, but when you're talking about a hardly ever used, I mean, how much do these casks cost? I mean, you know, English oak, I can't, it's probably the same as Scottish oak. I remember seeing a price list from a cooperage, one of the independent bottling companies sent me, and you know, sort of American oak casks are absolute, what, 3 figures, I guess, dirt cheap, you know, and that's because they're just so ubiquitous. Sherry butts a little bit more expensive. Scottish oak, English oak, well, just stick a 0 on the end. I mean, they were horrendously expensive. So, you know, that's a serious outlay of cash, you know, but and unique, it has to be said. I assume the distillery will reuse it. I mean, if you're spending that sort of money on casks, you're not going to sort of use them once and get shot of them. You're going to wring the buggers till and get every ounce of cost out of them. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see, to be honest with you, because they have such an intense character. Maybe they will use them in another way, reuse them, get a little bit less of the oak, maybe mix some American oak and English oak together, you know, do some kind of hybrid bottling. But anyway, let's come back to that. Let's see what pass on. Woody, dark, tannic. Again, lots of dark nuts. There's sort of macadamia, walnut, dried grape, fig. Again, I'm not getting a huge amount of distillery character. There's an element there of spirit, but we are really talking about the English oak character here, and I can see the point of this particular bottling. It's just unique at the end of the day. There is a little character of the spirit on the finish, or sort of more like the aftertaste in actual fact. Once kind of the oak has kind of just evaporated itself, you get a little bit of estery white fruit, a little bit of apricot, some minerally notes, some sort of, you know, but I mean that really is intensely oaked, it has to be said. And well, it's kind of, it's interesting. I can see why Jordan has kind of done this, because it's a sort of like, you know, the sort of thing that he would do. It's the what if kind of thing, I suppose. And well, you know, that's experimentation. Well, why not, you know? I suppose the problem is when you're spending a shitload of money on casks to experiment with, you're probably going to bottle it come hell or high water. But, you know, it's interesting. Right, so I'm now getting a little bit more spirit character, but it's kind of youthful, petal, rose petally kind of high-toned spirit. It's still quite toasty and oaky. It's a little bit softer. There's a little citric note there, a little bit of pepper. I'm also getting a little bit biscuity malt. There's even a sort of a yeastiness as there. I mean, it's intriguing. It's interesting. I mean, I love what they're doing at West Midlands. I mean, first bottling I tasted, I just had me, it has to be said, and I'm just so keen to see what they do next. The only shame is it takes so long between bottlings. Well, I mean, you know, it's a good thing and a bad thing, I suppose, isn't it? But let's see what comes on. Softer, less intense, less spicy, but still full, still quite oaky and dark, less tannin, more sweetness, a little bit more distillery character, a little bit more sort of estery fruit, barley, that kind of thing, but still the emphasis is pretty much firmly on the oak, it has to be said, and it is truly intriguing. I got such a very, very small allocation, it has to be said. There's not a lot of it knocking around, it has to be said, so if you've managed to get hold of a bottling, then good on you, because it really is intriguing, it has to be said. Follow the distillery. It's interesting that they've, I mean, one of these days they probably will do a core bottling. I think I remember Jordan saying that eventually they would do something like that, but at the moment they're still in the sort of the early stages. This is only the third release from the distillery, if you like. although if you remember the sort of like the first release of a number of different casks and all that kind of thing. Yeah, lovely, brilliant whiskey, great fun. Like I said, a little bit unbalanced, a little bit crazy, a little bit woohoo, but yeah, I love it. Right, okay, on to the final whiskey of the afternoon. After all that oak and so on, I really need some peat, so I'm hopefully going to get some. Yeah, I'm kind of getting some, and a little bit more, it has to be said. Burnt earth, astringent peat, peat smoke, bonfire ash. Do I get a lot of distillery character? I don't really know what the InchDairnie distillery character is, because I've never had an InchDairnie that's not been dialed up to sort of mammoth amounts of peat. I don't even know if they do an unpeated version. It's got a kind of chalkiness to it, sort of chalky, oily marzipan. There's a bit of kind of macerated apricot, damp vegetation. If you like your peated malts, it's an intriguing whiskey, it has to be said. It's, you know, nothing like I can. The closest I could probably get to it would be would probably be sort of, you know, what's the InchFad possibly, but then it doesn't have the weirdness of InchFad. It's actually quite, although it's quite manure-y and intense and heavily peated, it's not too weird, if you get my feeling. It's kind of quite yeah, expected, I suppose, but there's a lovely intensity there. But, you know, I wouldn't have pegged it for a lowland, and well, there you go, that's kind of half the fun, isn't it, I suppose. But, you know, and like I said, not having ever tasted sort of unpeated InchDairnie, I've got absolutely no idea what the spirit character is like. There's like I said, an element there. I'm getting a little bit of kind of chocolate peat now, it has to be said. Oh, intriguing, absolutely intriguing. Let's see what the pass. A little bit more spirit character. I'm getting oily, well, oily marzipan really, which is oak, not really spirit. There's a little bit of apricot, possibly some fleshy fruit, and then we're quickly into that astringent and earthy kind of peat, herbal peat as well, dark chocolate, dark spices, a little bit of citrus. It's an intriguing whiskey. It's quite woody on the finish and the aftertaste. And again, it's kind of, there feels like there's some spirit character there, but I really don't know what the spirit character is like. So it's very difficult to say. You know, there is an element of kind of barley, and there's maybe some citric notes, but it really is intensely peated. It's a stringent peat, an earthy peat, and it's fun. It's a bit, well, it's not like Octomore at all. What am I talking about? No, it isn't. It isn't like Octomore, because Octomore is the density within the peat. I mean, there's elements of different peat. I'm talking complete bollocks now, aren't I? Really. There's elements of complexity within the peat, I suppose. Not so. Yes. Okay. So there is a. Yes, there is a correlation, I guess, with Octomore, in that it is very much about the nuance of peat character more so than the actual spirit character, but there is a little bit of spirit character. So although I might appear to be talking complete bollocks, I'm actually making an awful lot of sense. Right, so let's sum today's episode of the show up. Anyway, I thought it's been really intriguing. I kind of lost the plot a little bit towards the end there, I think. But anyway, I'm kind of completely composed now. Anyway, right, so Hellstone, it just seems like a bloody age since I started off on this one. So the Hellstone King of Prussia rum cask finish, Yeah, I really liked it. I kind of have a little bit of a liking for the Hellstone whiskey, it has to be said. It's not a sort of an easy sell. It doesn't fly off the shelves, it has to be said. But it's a bit interesting. Maybe I should kind of push it more. You know, you want to buy a whiskey, sir? Buy this one. Anyway, I like that. I think that's fun. The Ben Nevis, like I said, nice to see Ben Nevis back on the shelf, albeit kind of without any sherry at all. Don't think it's made a sort of, it's made a difference obviously because there's no sherry character, but I like the intensity of it. I love the breadiness, the character of Ben Nevis. It is so unique, it has to be said. The 17-year-old Calvados finished Glencadam, lovely whiskey. Love Glencadam, love it young, love it old. It's a bit pricey, it has to be said, this 17-year-old. I mean, if you compare it to the standard 15, it's a big jump from that to this. But that's bloody good whiskey, it has to be said. I mean, I wouldn't recommend it if I didn't believe in the whiskey, and I love that. I think that's a great whiskey. And likewise with the Raasay. I mean, I think that's a really intriguing whiskey. I love interesting, as long as interesting isn't too one-dimensional. Yes, again, it is fairly heavy on the sherry and on the Hungarian oak, but that's the interest in it. There's still an element of balance from the spirit. It's not wholly one-dimensional. It is off into the dark side to a certain extent. And talking of dark side, the West Midlands story, I mean, just weird and wonderful. Just the what if, the English oak, well, it's just in your face, it has to be said. It's dark and it's uncompromising, and yeah, loved it, absolutely loved it. Shouldn't do, dirty little secret possibly, who knows. And the InchDairnie at the end of the day, like I said, no idea what the InchDairnie spirit character is all about, but I mean, that was a fun whiskey at the end of the day. Loved the complexity within the peat character, the earthiness, the astringent, the herbal peat. Lots of intrigue there, it has to be said, and good fun. No saltiness, no Islay character, no sort of seaweediness or anything like that. So obviously not an Islay peated malt, but I don't think I would have got it as a peated lowland. But anyway, that's part and parcel of whiskey these days, all quite unique. Anyway, that's this week's episode of the show in the bag. There won't be an episode next week because I've family commitments, so it'll probably be a couple of weeks before the next episode of the show. Gives me a bit of time to figure out what I'm going to do. But until then, I hope you've enjoyed this week's episode of the show. Totally unique, totally different. Like I said, you never know quite exactly what you're going to get with this kind of box of chocolates, if you get my meaning. Anyway, all that's left to say is good afternoon and good dramming.
Эго, погнавшись, как за химерой.